Boom. Cool. Hey, hey.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. I've been having an amazing day with one of my business partners,
Cool.
and we have been ridiculously productive.
Yes, we have. What's your definition of ridiculously? We like to have operational definitions. This is just
Right?
productive. Well, no, we have been
It's
ridiculously.
been a little bit ridiculous, but fun too. We've been
Yes.
yeah. What is the definition of ridiculously productive? Well,
Mm,
I think starting a business, I mean, I hesitate to say this on a
mm.
wellness podcast,
Okay,
right?
let's be
But
honest.
starting a breakfast meeting at 7:30 a.m. and
Yes,
working right up until we go live is a little
yeah.
bit ridiculously productive.
Yeah, and I think ridiculous is if it's not sustainable,
Well, that's
and I would say that the way that we've been working may not be sustainable for the next 30 years, which is
Mhm.
why we're setting up the business and everything because we
Right.
know we don't want to keep it like this forever.
And to be fully transparent, we did
Hmm.
take some breaks,
Yeah, of
and
course.
we, of course, have been hydrating well all
Yes.
day and stretch
Yes.
breaks. And
Hmm.
we did not, hindsight's 2020, right?
Hmm.
We didn't take enough dance breaks,
Okay,
right?
we'll do
Just
better tomorrow.
future note. Yeah.
Tomorrow we'll dance. Tomorrow we dance.
I love it, my friend.
Ah,
Should we do
okay.
our official intro and kick this
Yes.
sucker off? Let's do it.
Yes. Hi, ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shalo Glow LLC and All Natural Handmade Shea Butter Company. I am a champion for your self care and practical business systems.
Hey, y'all, I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, published author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Yes. Together, we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And we get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and our wellness. How do we do it in the midst of juggling everything else, right?
Yes. Yes, yes. And we usually wait, but I want to go ahead and jump in so we can give the time for the full scope of the conversation. And today we are going to be talking about social wellness, and we're working off of a new definition if you ladies are used to listening to our show. And today, social wellness we're going to use is about the ability to nurture ourselves, others, and our relationships with healthy boundaries. It includes balancing, right, the other 7 dimensions of wellness and actively participating as an interdependent being in the web of life.
Love it.
Mhm.
When you think about that definition, what do you think about?
I think about, especially with social wellness, is boundaries, right? I think about
Mhm.
teaching people how to treat you and how you show up in situations with other people. If you're
Mhm.
upset, you start talking to people at the side of your neck. That's what I call it when people are disrespectful, right? Or are you composed and address it first and then communicate and then take it to a higher level if somebody is
Mhm.
seeming like they don't understand? What do you think about when you look at the
Well, even when
definition?
you think about that, I think about that very first part of that definition, the
Yeah.
ability to nurture ourselves.
Mhm.
Then it goes to others. And
Mhm.
then it goes to our relationships with healthy boundaries. So I think
Yeah.
about that, knowing ourselves and nurturing ourselves well enough that
Mhm.
we can take that deep breath
Mhm.
and know what we need,
Mhm.
right? Aloha, Loika. Loika's listening on LinkedIn this afternoon.
Aloha,
Glad to
Loeka.
see you. Nice to see you, my friend.
Yes.
Yeah, I think about that. I think yes to the healthy boundaries. And I think
Yes.
a part, we talked to last week or the week before
Mhm.
about the 5 skills of self-care and healthy
Mhm.
boundaries. And,
Yes.
a piece of it is knowing yourself.
Mhm.
So you know what those boundaries are.
Yeah.
So,
And we focus all the time on self-care and community care. And self-care
mhm,
has to be first because if you're not here, you're not part of the community, right? So for me, one of my boundaries in social wellness is not touching my phone at first. I give that time to myself. And when it's those days when let's say I slept a little bit longer than expected and that hour time for myself is crunched down a little bit more, I feel the difference in the day. Things might move me a little bit more than I usually would like them to because I didn't pour into myself before I started intaking all this other energy from everywhere else.
right? I
Mhm.
think that is, I think it's smart, right? We
Yeah.
talk about our wellness routines, we talk about
Mhm.
our morning practices um, as part of our self care and how we start the day. You know, I'm our next guest is a friend of ours and
Yeah.
has been on the show before. I am curious about her morning practices
Mhm.
and what she's going to say about social wellness today. And do you want to go ahead and pull her up? I know we're
Absolutely.
early,
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
right?
Yes.
So, if you have been a longtime listener of our show, our next guest will be no stranger to you. She has been a guest on the podcast. She's been a guest host on the podcast. And
Mm.
we are excited to welcome her back today because she is one of the upcoming authors in the Women Connected in Wisdom book that's coming out in September. So, we want to welcome Sacil Armstrong. I'm going to read her bio as we always do for our
Yes.
new listeners. Cecile is a self care and social justice facilitator, integrating self care with equity and anti racism training. Her teaching motto is no blame, no shame, no guilt, because those emotions get in the way of learning. She focuses on evidence based techniques and ideas that not only make us feel good, but also increase our mental and emotional capacity to handle the new normal. She loves music, art, and laughter, and often dances her way into her trainings to set the mood. See, she's one of us, y'all. Even though change can be hard, she believes we have reason to celebrate. Showing up to learn is a step towards making a positive change. Cecile is the founder of the online Inspired by Indigo community, where members learn how and practice making equity a habit. So I want to
Yes.
welcome to our stage Cecile Armstrong, our friend and
Hey,
collaborator.
hey
Hi.
y'all.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you. I love your new definition for
Social
social
wellness.
wellness, right? I
Thank you
forgot
so
the word wellness,
much.
social wellness. I love it.
Thank
Right?
you.
Mhm,
Yeah.
We've been playing with and tweaking all the definitions
mhm,
as you know, as this new book is coming out.
mhm.
Yes.
And behind the scenes, we've been playing with them for a while. And so
Mhm.
now, you know, that our first draft is submitted and we're waiting on the editing copies to come back. We are
Yes.
starting to talk about them on the show.
So exciting.
And for our listeners that listen, we're also going to start having our authors pop in. So
Mm.
there may be some folks that are new to you, and there may be some of our friends that you have already heard in early, bringing them back to talk about a new topic of wellness and what they're up
Mhm.
to. So, Cecile, we wanted you to come on today to talk about social wellness because that's one of the chapters that you wrote in the
Mhm.
upcoming book. And you want to tell everybody what the title of that chapter is?
Yeah, it's called Making Equity a Habit because that's what
Making
I teach.
right.
Right.
Right? You wanna give us a little teaser into what
I
you talk about
will.
in the chapter?
I will. I'll give you a little teaser. Okay, it's based on my online community, really. It's about recognizing oppression where you see it, recognizing the systems that are in place, and then learning what you can do to disrupt things and change things. In Inspired by Indigo, we follow four pillars in the community. We discuss four pillars every month. The first one is self-care because you got to get in your body and deal with your own emotions before you start talking about the hard stuff. That's how you build your capacity to be able to take in information. The second pillar is know your facts because that's how you undo myths and lies by learning the facts and knowing the truth. And then the third pillar is undoing the work. You got to undo what we've learned and lived about race, privilege, equality, homophobia, xenophobia, all of the ways that we oppress each other. You have to go out and actually do the work. And then the fourth pillar is to rest and celebrate. You rest so you don't just get disillusioned and burnt out, and then you celebrate so that you remember that you're actually making progress. If you wait until everything is the way you want it, if you wait until you have that utopia and racism is gone and nobody's homophobic and all of that kind of stuff, you're never going to celebrate. So you got to celebrate your
Right.
wins along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I
Mhm.
love that you wanted to write under social wellness,
Mhm.
because it really is what you teach and how you live your life and what you're trying to inspire everybody to do over at Inspired by Indigo is to make social change. So
Yeah.
we're all well.
Exactly, exactly. And when people can see that we're all interconnected and that by getting in our own bodies and calming down our own nervous system, it changes the way we interact with other people. And when you learn how to forgive yourself and see your own humanity, then it allows you to do that for somebody else. And that's the beginning of that change.
And what else I love about it too, Cecile, is the getting in your body part. For me, the fact that you put those things together can't be minimized, especially because of the psychological effects of how things over time can affect you. You
Mhm.
and I talked on your show, and I was so thankful that you did a video, your first video, for the interview where we talked about the situation I talked about last week on our show,
Mhm.
and this white guy calling the police on us because we were in an apartment complex where he lived and he thought that we didn't belong there. And it helped me feel more comfortable to breathe and be connected to
Mhm.
myself and then talk about the situation.
Yeah.
So remembering that you're here and you're taking up space and this person's opinion doesn't have to move you unless you would
Right.
allow it to. I think
Mhm.
that can help a lot of people when they're processing things, because we have to process it. How do you
Mhm.
take on all this information and what do you do with it? You have to deal with it anyway. So to do that from a healthy place, I love that you
Yeah.
teach people how to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, when you called me, that was the first thing I asked you, wasn't it? It's like, "Are you
Mhm.
breathing?"
Yep, and
While you were
absolutely.
talking.
Yes, yes,
Right.
because we're connected in wisdom, and I that's why I'm so thankful for you ladies. Because whether it's me putting my feet in the grass, like we talked about the first episode, and of
Mhm.
course I still do that, or taking my big, deep belly breaths and giving myself fierce love, absolutely was doing that throughout the situation.
Well, I'm glad, because I can imagine how the impact it would have had if you weren't able to ground yourself in the middle of
Mhm.
that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So when you talk about equity and for our listeners who I feel like a lot of times we hear a lot of words and sometimes they can be interchanged, right? Can we give a specific definition so we can kind of break down what making it a
Yeah.
habit looks like?
Yeah, okay. Equity is giving everyone an equal opportunity. People like to use equity and equality as interchangeable, and they're not. And actually, the lesson next month for Know Your Facts and Inspired by Indigo is going to be about how equity does not equal equality. They're not the same. Equality is about treating everybody the same. It's when people say things like, I don't see color, or, I treat everyone the same. I treat everyone fairly. I give everyone the same amount of something. Equity is giving everybody an equal opportunity to succeed. And that means that everybody's not going to get the same thing, but they're going to get what they need in order to be successful in whatever your project is. Whether that means one person gets more money than somebody else or one person gets more attention than somebody else, everybody gets what they need so that they can have an equal opportunity for success. Whereas equality, if you're giving everybody the same thing, you're moving the starting line, but you're moving the starting line the same amount for everyone. So the differences are still there.
That
Such a
makes perfect
beautiful
sense.
definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And I
you.
and I think it helps when you work with organizations, right? We've talked about the list of different groups of people that you've helped. I think it
Mhm.
helps with the tailored experience for that person. If I was in a
Right.
community that operated that way, I would feel more seen, more equipped, and
Mhm.
more set up for success.
Yeah. That's the whole point. If you think about how do I get somebody to this end point where they're self-sufficient and they can, do for themselves, they can have the opportunities, then what did I need to give them in the beginning to get there?
Mhm.
Well, when you think about what's going on in our world today, there's so
Mm.
much.
Mhm. A
What are
lot.
you, what are you talking to folks about right now in regards to social wellness?
Oh my
What's coming
goodness.
up for you?
Oh, I'm talking to a lot of people about a lot of different things. But lately we've been talking a lot about the January 6th committee hearings. Um, they have revealed a lot of evidence that has not been out in the public before. And what I'm seeing on social media is um, three different reactions. One reaction is people who are like, I knew it, and why haven't they done anything about it yet? Um, and people not understanding the way government works, that it takes a long
Right.
time. And I'm a little frustrated with how slow they go myself.
And these
Um,
hearings are actually an incremental step into doing it
yes,
because
right.
the hearings
Hearings.
are on record, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, the hearings are on record, and Merrick Garland, who's the attorney general, has said that he's watching, everybody on his staff is watching these hearings to see if there's evidence that they don't have already. So this is an incremental step. It's also a way to get to inform the public and to generate what do you call it? I don't know if they're looking for public outrage, but to get public opinion on their side to move
Or
forward.
support, public
Support.
support,
There you
because we
go.
live in a democracy and these are our
Yes.
elected officials,
Hmm.
even though they
And
forget sometimes. Sorry.
yeah, they do. They do sometimes. No, you're fine. The second reaction that I'm seeing from people that I'm talking to is, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was like this." And then the third reaction that I'm seeing, mostly the people that I'm watching, but not necessarily having conversations with, is everything is a lie. Everybody who's against Trump is a traitor, and I don't know why anybody's looking at this, and it shouldn't be on TV in the first place. Right. And so when I'm looking at this and thinking about social wellness, what I notice is that the people who are on either end, on opposite ends, like, I knew it, and why aren't they doing anything? And they're liars. Neither group seems like they're in their body. It's like, this is
Mhm.
what I believe, and this is what I know, and everybody else has to believe this, and when I'm talking with them, I'm like, can you pause for a minute? Can you just pause and breathe?
Right.
you know? And then when people stop and take a breath, which I'm going to do right now. Right. Then they slow down their speech, their intensity goes down. And then I'm like, can we just talk for a minute? Can you listen for just a second? Or, you know what? Now that you've calmed down a little bit, or now that you're slowing down a little bit, I can hear you better. Do you want to
Mhm.
explain that again? And then will you give me a minute to respond? Did y'all feel that energy shift just there when I just took a breath?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, and to
Yeah.
acknowledge that this is a charged topic,
Oh yeah.
right? It's
Mhm.
it's charged for so many reasons. I mean,
Mhm.
we Women Connect in Wisdom, and a lot of people don't know this, but
Mm.
we were set to go live. Our very first show was January. Like it was
Yep.
that day.
We
And
were like, nope.
we were like, nope, because
Algorithm is gonna bury
we have something major going on that we were in front of the
Yes.
TVs paying
Yes.
attention
Mhm.
to what was going on because
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
knew it was we knew it was historical,
Mhm.
impactful, and holy guacamole, Batman, what is happening in our democracy, right?
Right. Right.
And so
Yeah.
we didn't have our first show until the next week.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Uh, and so that date will stick in our brains for a long time,
Definitely.
right?
And not only
Yeah.
that, I was coming from New Jersey, so we're
Mhm.
driving through Philly and the capital
Mm.
and
Mhm.
everything, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Around those days was the end of our trip, so
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
podcast was moved, that had moved, and so it was interesting to watch, and I remember the day, they were having the Senate hearing actually on the radio, and I usually am not listening to stuff like that, was door dashing and was listening, and when they said that he when he used the word patriotic, right? We give definitions on this podcast for a reason because people's definitions are different. But when I heard that, I said, it depends on who you're talking to, what that action is. Some
Mhm.
people's reaction and expectation when you say to be patriotic is exactly what happened. But again, if we're talking about equity, for an example, I was taking pictures for a business that generates money for the economy, and somebody else was charging the capital, but different people would have different reactions. There's this
Mhm.
huge situation over here with me just taking pictures in a place that I was supposed to and able to be, but somebody else was charging the capital, and another group of people doesn't understand why we're even talking about it.
Right. Right.
Well, and I want to give the actual definition of patriotic.
Mm.
Patriotic is having or expressing devotion to and vigorous support for one's country. So to have vigorous support for one's country the United States of America is to
Mm,
defend our democracy.
mm,
And that's
Mhm.
not what was happening on
Mhm.
January 6th, as these hearings are showing. That
Mhm.
was not in defense of our democracy in any
Mm-mm.
way, shape, or form.
No, that was people who wanted to get their way. And since we're talking about people who want to get their way, these are a group of people who are not used to being told no,
mm,
who are not used to who are not used to not getting their way, and that's a symptom of white supremacy. Because if a bunch of black folks showed up like they had, during the summer of 2020 when the Black Lives Matter protests were out there, they had the military, they had the police, they were ready to, hurt people to protect the building, but they didn't do that same thing for when they knew that thousands of white folks were coming to protest and these folks showed up with weapons. They were violent and they didn't
Hmm.
get the same treatment. So that wasn't equity at all.
Right.
hmm But one side gets to label themselves as patriotic. And the other side, even if we labeled ourselves as patriotic, the media isn't going to portray us that way and isn't going to call us that.
absolutely. And another part of what you do and how you approach situations and conversations like this with the removing of blame, guilt, and shame. Can we talk
hmm
about that a little bit and how you hold both? I think, like you said, it definitely limits learning if we are
hmm
always comparing or again, not in our bodies. So, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my motto when I'm teaching is no blame, no shame, no guilt. And I came to that over a few years because I have been a grassroots activist for a long time. I have talked about poverty and equity and racism and oppression for years. And what I found in the beginning is I'm doing all of this teaching. I'm teaching about the facts. I'm teaching about things that we can do. And everybody's in my classes going, "That's awesome. This is great." And then they leave and I'm not seeing any change. So I'm like, y'all said this was awesome. How come you're not doing anything? And the black folks that I talked to was like, everything you told me was eye opening and I'm already exhausted and I just don't have the emotional capacity to do this. And the white folks were like, everything you told me was amazing and now I feel so guilty and I feel ashamed and I don't want to put myself out there. And so I, went back to the drawing board and was like, okay, I'm glad that people know, that's like the second pillar, they know your facts, but how do I get them to pillar number 3, undo the work? And what I found out was that when I started having people to get in their bodies, and I started out with just breathing, and then I started with some movement, and then I started, dancing when I came in to get people into a good mood before we even started talking about anything bad. And what I was finding was that the more I get people in their body and relaxed, and when I say out loud, no blame, no shame, no guilt, then people are like, oh, and they're ready to learn. It just, they let their defenses down and they're more open to hearing. A lot of times when I start, after I dance my way in and get people to dance and sing with me, and I say the motto for the class is no blame, no shame, no guilt, people cry. And they were like, I was afraid to come, but I knew I needed to learn. And they start crying and they're like, thank you for saying that. Now I feel like I can breathe and now I can listen. And since I've been doing that, the people who come through my workshops, they leave changed and they leave ready to take action and they leave ready to do something different. And they actually call me up and or email me and say, this is what I've done since I left your class.
And
So
can I add,
it
because I
works.
have been in one of your classes and I'm a member of your community, just full transparency for our audience. I will also say they leave with joy and connection.
Yes.
Because I have found
Yeah.
that in the work,
Mhm.
before you start this work, before you start on this path, often like you have stories, or I'm just going to speak for myself. Like, I was taught that, you don't want to be seen, or it can be dangerous, or it can be this or that. And what I really found in the work of activism is joy and
Mhm.
community. Like
Yes.
that it is a place where relationships are built. It is a place where you don't have to do it by yourself. And the other thing
Mhm.
I know for me personally is often when crazy stuff is going on in the world, when you are seeing these acts of violence and racism and these mass shootings that are directed at black and brown bodies,
Yeah.
that I feel hopeless. And when I am in community, when I'm doing things like being a part of the Inspired by Indigo community and I'm doing activism and I feel hopeful instead of helpless
Mhm.
because I can't do it by myself. None of us can. Like,
Mhm.
this is too big for one body to hold. And if we all take incremental steps and affect change, then we can shift our culture.
Mhm. That's true.
Right?
So absolutely for that, right? And I wanted to make sure that I paused and didn't just go to the next question. So Cecile, as an administrator of classes and with your experience, what do you do to take care of yourself as you hold space for other people who are working on letting
Um, it
Go
looks like
for it.
Shannon
She
is
cut
frozen,
out
but
for
I'm gonna go for
just
it.
a
Okay.
second. Yeah, go
All
for it.
right. Well, I do my best to take my own advice. And Christine knows this because she calls me out when I don't. But I do my best to take my own advice. I focus on my breathing several times throughout the day. The first thing I do when I get up is get in my body. You know, first thing I do before I get out of bed, I pause and I see where I am and I take a deep breath from my belly and I make sure that I'm in my body before I ever even get out of bed. And I do that throughout the day because I will catch myself if I'm watching the news or if I'm really focused on my work, I will catch myself holding my breath. And when I'm holding my breath, then that means the energy is not flowing. And so I focus on being in my body. I go outside every day and put my feet in the grass. You know, that's one of the first things we talked about. And so I make sure I put my feet in the grass every day to get grounded. And being grounded is like the most important thing for me, returning back to center because I can get knocked all over the place, but if I can bring myself back to center, then I know that I'm okay. And if things get wobbly, if I can get back to center, then I know I can get back to my focus and stay on track. Another thing that I do is push my water. I drink plenty of water. Um, and then a third thing that I do is I try very hard. I'm not always successful with this, but I try very hard to manage my energy and manage my time by limiting how many things are on my to-do list for any one day. Um, I think both of y'all have probably heard me say that I don't put more than 3 meetings on my schedule. If I have more than 3 meetings in a day, I know that I feel overwhelmed, and so if I don't get on Zoom more than 3 times a day. So so that there's that, and then my task list. I try not to have more than 3 things on my list for in any one day. Now I have a big to-do list that has like my big calendar with I have all these things to do, but for today, I will have no more than 3 meetings and no more than 3 things on my to do because otherwise I feel overwhelmed and I get distracted and I can't focus.
And can I just say, as somebody who's a collaborator with you, this method works. Like, you get more done than, like, it is. I watch you just kick butt. Like, I am like, what? Like, your systems and organizations that you have in place just inspire me, my friend.
Aw,
And I
thank
want to
you.
tell our listeners, if you, Cecile was on back episode 20 back in May of 2021 and talked about physical wellness. So we'll put a link in the show notes to that episode.
Mhm.
So if you want to hear more in depth about some of those practices, we talked on the show about that. But it made me think about that when you were talking about walking in the grass and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
was like, I remember that conversation and it was a good one. So I want to link that for our listeners.
thank you. So what do you guys do? I know Shannon, after that episode, you talked about how you were going to put your feet in the grass more often. Have you been sticking to that?
absolutely been putting my feet in the grass, speaking to the trees, and I'm
Mhm.
currently in a search for a good hill to roll down. So if anybody knows of a nice grassy hill with a nice ending, me and my partner are looking for it. So yes, it's been great.
I love that specificity that you need a good ending on the hill.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah,
that,
no,
I mean,
no,
that is
no
some truth,
sidewalks,
right? That is some really good
parking
truth.
lots.
Just not any hill. It's one
right.
with a really sloped, gentle,
Yes,
really nice
Mhm.
ending. I love
yes,
that. I love that a
yes.
Mhm.
lot.
I
What
love
about
that you're
you?
speaking to the trees.
Yes, yes. And just we've had, a list of people on for environmental wellness, talking about Mother Earth and just thanking her for the elements and enjoying it more and forest
Mhm.
bathing, taking walks, So I've
Mhm.
really been taking it all in. And since I started at Top Golf in July and was there through this past March, I loved looking at the green of the golf field. I might be
Mhm.
at work, but I was still half outside, and it really made me appreciate looking at the color green. And thankfully, Atlanta is known as the city in the trees, so I've been enjoying myself.
Awesome.
Mhm. What about you, Christine? Have you been putting your feet in the grass? I know you have your labyrinth.
Yeah, I like to start my day by going outside and saying hello to the sun, putting my feet in the grass. And as you noticed today, Shannon, because you're at my house, like
Yeah.
my flowers are showing out this year.
Mhm.
So the other thing that I like to do, I like to channel my grandmother. So I'm going to call her
Mhm.
name. Her name is Lila Ruth Nichols. She is not on this plane anymore, but she used to love to take people around her yard and tell about her flowers and where they
Mhm.
came from. So I did a little bit of that when Shannon came to the house this morning. I was showing her my friendship garden,
Mhm.
and I spared her the who gave me what everything
I
list,
think I've
but
heard it before.
right, right. I always channel my nanny, my Lila Ruth, when I'm doing that, but it
Mhm.
makes me smile because
Yeah.
it just brings me such joy to flower share. And then when they
Mhm.
bloom, and then you get to like name, oh,
Mhm.
this came from my friend Shelly, this came from my friend Cheryl. Like it
Mhm.
just, it's a joy to me. And it also, when I think about social wellness,
I
when
was
I
getting
think
ready to say
about
that.
environmental wellness, when I think
Mhm.
about indigenous methods, like,
Mhm.
right, like how do we support each other, right?
Mhm.
One of the ways I support people is with food and flowers. Like
Mhm.
I think we've talked about that in financial wellness before, that that's one of the things that we were allowed to spend money on because
Yep.
my dad was a
Mhm.
farmer. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
so I can share, I've got this abundance and wealth of flowers that are multiplying and need to be thinned down, honestly. So, like, I
Mhm.
share them with other people, and whether
Mhm.
it's herbs or whether it's the pumpkins, because whoo, I got a patch of pumpkins this year,
Mhm.
and they need room to grow. So, potting
Mhm.
them up and sharing them with different people
Mhm.
is part of my social and environmental wellness.
I really like
Mhm.
that though, and I think about that with social wellness, right? What am I able to give? Especially
Mhm.
through COVID. Like I've been very intentional about my support system, right? And they've been here differently than they were before COVID. Not everybody's as available. My best friend is pregnant. We just had somebody in our Women Connect in our Manifestation Mondays who had, are we saying that
A
yet? Are we
baby.
doing that? Yes, a baby girl
A baby.
today. Happy birthday.
Happy
Um,
birthday to the newest
Yes.
member of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
Yes,
Yes.
Welcome.
yes. So it looks different, and so I love being intentional about knowing what you can give. And if that's
Mhm.
3 things on the list today, then guess what? 4 is going on tomorrow, and that's gonna have to be
Exactly.
okay.
Mhm.
And I've been more intentional about that too, Cecile. The other day I said, you know what? I'm gonna go home and organize my transactions in my bank account. And I was just procrastinating. I just felt this huge weight, and it's like, ooh, but I need to do it. And I said, you know what? Sometimes what I do is just plan it instead of actually doing it. If it doesn't
Mhm.
feel like it sits in today, write it
Mhm.
down. It'll get done, and then go rest or do
Mhm.
something that's smaller that will is more of a priority. Maybe that you need to finish that'll get you to the next thing. But knowing
Mhm.
what you can give has really helped me set boundaries and not over pour from my cup as things have been shifting.
Mhm. Yeah, and the other thing about what you just said is about listening to the universe. So sometimes you have plans,
Mhm.
and then the universe says, "Not today." Like
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I had plans yesterday that I was, I don't know if people know, but I'm moving, but I had plans yesterday that I was gonna pack, and I went to go get boxes from someplace that was supposed to save them, and they didn't save the boxes, and so I was like, "Well, I guess I'm not packing today."
Mhm.
And I had another big project for the week, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna work on this project." And so I got started and I got partway through and I wanted to finish the whole thing, but I knew I was feeling tired, but I wasn't going to stop. Well, my internet went out, so I couldn't finish it. And
Mhm.
the messages I kept getting was, "You need to go rest." And I was like, "No, I know I need to rest, but I'll do it after this." And when I sat down to figure out what I was going to do next. And I woke up 45 minutes later.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that about your internet going out. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating when that happens,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it is one of those things. Like, I mean, y'all know when I was recovering from COVID, like my computer crashed during that time. Like it was like, no, you're not even doing this. Like
Mhm.
Mhm.
you're sitting down, you
Mhm.
are
Right.
resting, and you are we're gonna make this to
Mhm.
where you get this break, right?
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
sometimes well, I know most of the time our society teaches us to push through and to keep
Mhm.
going and to do this. And, that's one of the things that we want to shift culture about with Women
Yeah.
Connected in Wisdom is that take that time to breathe, take that
Mhm.
time to listen and like take that nap. I mean,
Mhm.
Cecile and I yesterday had a meeting scheduled and we got on. Yeah, I'm going to tell a story on us. Is that
Mhm.
okay, Cecile?
That's okay.
And because we have an upcoming collaboration and project with foster and adoptive kids that is being launched this summer.
Mhm.
And we got on to do one of our work sessions, and neither of us were functioning well. Like
Mhm.
we were like, okay, what do we want to do? Like we were just, how when things just sometimes don't work,
We
right?
couldn't even get the words out.
And usually we get on and we are like, whew, like we are
Mhm.
just flying, we're going. And
Mhm.
we stopped, we took a deep breath and we asked ourselves, what do we need? And I was like, I need a nap.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I woke up before 5 a.m.
Mhm.
and I'm not functioning really well right now. Especially when you're creating content or
Right.
curriculum or like,
Mhm.
it's one of those things that you want to be sharp and clear. And
Mhm.
I was on the opposite end of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I said, "I need to rest. I know I need to rest." And then we got off, and I was like, "I'm gonna try this one more time." And that's when my internet went
That's
out.
when it was okay. All right, we're connecting all the dots now. We're
Right.
connecting all the dots. So you had a good 45-minute nap. I think that's
Mhm.
about what mine was
Mhm.
too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we were holding friend for our space who was holding space for our friend who was in labor.
Mhm.
So that nap was probably what we all
Mhm.
needed to do to give her the energy
Give
she
her the
needed,
energy. Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love
So
that. And Cecile, I don't know if I told you this, but Christine was sick, right? She was just talking about recovering. And you
Mhm.
and I had talked because I read your chapter and I called you. I said, hey, what is a peasant skirt? And we're laughing, talking about your chapter. I'm having a ball talking about unreleased books and unreleased chapters, right? Calling the authors, just
Mhm.
thinking about the history of that. And we were talking about Christine not feeling well and how we were holding space. And you had given me a time in the conversation that you had told her, right? Like a set amount of days. So I reach out to Christine and we're talking. And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to take the weekend. I said, I thought Dr. Cecile said 7 days. And she's like, between the two of you, I'm not going to get anything done.
So right there is social wellness accountability.
Yeah.
Like that is when you have a community that holds you accountable in love. Like that
Mhm.
was totally I was trying to squeak by in the least amount of
Mm-mm.
time, but my community was like not having it. They were like,
Uh,
no, no,
Right.
no. This is and it was exactly what I needed, right?
yeah.
But I think that's what we talk like that's what's so valuable about Women Connected in Wisdom,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Is that we don't have to do this by ourselves
Right.
Mhm.
and that we have people that can hold space for us and that can
Mhm.
be connected and to support our wellness because
Mhm.
it's hard sometimes y'all like it's hard to stop and rest
Mhm.
and give ourselves permission when society's not giving us permission
Right.
and there's so much to do. Just to
Mhm.
be honest, there's a lot of
Mhm.
work to do in this
Yeah.
world,
Mhm. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And when you don't have a community, when you don't have a social group to hold you accountable and to tell you that things can be different, it can get so skewed in your own head. Because
Mhm.
I've been with the Manifesting Mondays group and the Women Connected and Wisdom group for just over a year now.
Mhm.
And the year before, I was doing everything by myself.
Mhm.
And I remember the first few meetings that I had with y'all, I was so ready to blame myself. Well, I was blaming myself for things that didn't go right and things that didn't get done. And then you guys were like, "But look at this part that happened and this was amazing. And look at this." And I was like ignoring all the things that I had done well and just focusing on where I had messed up or where I thought I had messed up. But
Mhm.
it took y'all telling me, you got to give yourself credit. And I'm sitting here holding space for other people and not holding it for myself. But now that I'm, in this group, I'm getting better about holding space for myself and, recognizing my own wins. So that wouldn't have happened if I was still doing it all by myself.
Mm.
I love
Absolutely.
that. I love that because I think about how much amazing work you have in this world and
Aw, thank
how
you.
much your work affects people's lives on all different levels
And has
and
been.
has been for years. And I think it's
Aw,
very
thanks.
human, and I think it's very I think it's a very common thing in our culture that we don't.
Hmm.
We don't
Hmm.
Mhm.
recognize. We look for the things that we still have left to do. Like even today when Shannon got
Mm.
out of the car, she said, "Oh, your yard is beautiful." And I said, "I am trying to look at just the blooms and not the weeds that need to be pulled."
Mm.
Because I mean,
Mhm.
that's the truth of our lives, right?
Mhm.
There's things that are blooming brilliantly and there's weeds. There's always
Mhm.
going to
There's
be
always
like,
gonna be that balance.
and
Mhm.
some of it aren't
Mhm.
weeds. They're just, society tells us they're weeds, right?
Right.
Hello,
Hmm.
Hey,
Delilah. Welcome.
Ma.
Yeah, this is Cecile's mom and our friend Delilah. And she says, ladies, it is hard to stop and rest. Sometimes it's hard to start.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Ooh. Well, and that's the other
Mhm.
thing about social wellness and
Mhm.
community, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Is that one of the things we do every week in Manifesting Mondays is we tell each other what we're planning on starting that week
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
what our big dreams and goals are. And
Mhm.
Yes.
then the next week,
Hmm?
we check back in with each other.
Mhm.
Right.
And that every one of us on this call, there's been a time that we're like, yeah, that
Yep.
Yeah, I
didn't
didn't do that.
Did not
Didn't
happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
No. And it was crazy because I didn't even think about it like that before. If I was planning on going to the dentist, maybe I just ended up not going to the dentist. But this time with the Manifestation Mondays group, Christine was like, well, what happened? Like, how did you leave and had a very short drive to the dentist and never ended up there? What happened the last time you went to the dentist?
Right.
I said, oh, I did get two wisdom teeth removed and went straight to work as a kitchen manager. So I'm running the whole
Mm.
restaurant and brought no medicine with me. That's what
Mm.
happened last time. I said it makes sense. Maybe my
So what happened
subconscious
last time is you got
wasn't
trauma in your body. So the
Mhm.
exactly.
next time you don't want to schedule that appointment because your
Right.
body is remembering, woo,
Mhm.
Mhm.
danger, danger.
Yep.
Wait, whoa,
Mhm.
whoa.
Yep. And because you
Mhm.
said that now, it's like, okay, I sit down to do the transactions for the bank and I know enough now to notice what's going on. Maybe I don't need to do this right now. What would
Mhm.
happen if I don't do it? Nothing. Maybe I'll put it off to another day, to the day that's allocated to financial transactions, and that'll feel
Mhm.
better and I can do something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
but
that.
for me too, community, like you said, Cecilia, is showing that mirror to yourself.
Mhm.
Sometimes we can get caught up, especially as caregivers, in the things that still need to get done or the things that we still want to work on. But Christine, like the blooms and the weeds is kind of the same metaphor as the grief and gratitude. There's the things
Mhm.
that you want to fix and the things that are working well. And what I
Mhm.
realized a few years ago is that there might be so much going on. I feel like in my life there's always crazy stuff. I've been saying I should write a book for a long time, so I'm grateful for you ladies to be in this book with me. Um, but it's interesting because we can focus on all the things that we would say no to if we could choose if they would happen or not. But at the
Mhm.
same time, there was all these things that I had been waiting for. As a young adult, I wanted my own apartment. I wanted a good paying job. I wanted a
Mhm.
car that was mine and I didn't have to, worry about transportation. And I had all those things while at the same time I was working through other things. So realizing that I've been waiting years to be in the position I'm in, even though there might be parts of the picture that I didn't know to paint in. The picture
Mhm.
that I was looking for is still there.
Mhm.
Can we pause for some affirmation and celebration around
Yes.
financial wellness? Is
Yeah.
there
Mm.
anything you want to share this week, Shannon?
Oh, you
Uh,
talking about these bank accounts? Are you talking about
well,
the
I was talking
car? You
about,
talking about what you talking
yeah,
about?
I was talking about what major
My
milestone just happened.
wheels. Yes. So yes, I have paid off my car as of last month.
Mm.
So celebrated the birthday last month, started the second business last month, and I paid off my car. So May was a great
Woo,
month.
woo, woo.
Right?
Yes, thank you.
Well, and
Mhm.
just pausing to celebrate, right? Because I think
Absolutely.
that's the other thing, Cecile, you talk about as your fourth pillar in Inspired by
Mhm.
Indigo,
Mhm.
rest and celebrate.
Mhm.
Like, it would be easy just to blow past that, Shannon, and go to the
Mhm.
next
Yes.
bill and go to the
Yeah,
next.
Mhm.
no.
But that's a big milestone in
That's
It
anybody's
is.
huge.
life, right?
Yes.
Yes.
In
Mhm.
it's like, what?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Let's celebrate.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh, oh,
Mm,
oh.
mm, mm.
And I love the rest part too, in between a position or a season of life to be able to rest a second before you just run to the next thing, I think
Mhm.
is huge.
Which is a good spot to say to our listeners that
Mhm.
we are taking next week off. We are
Yes.
taking a summer break in honor of my birthday next Wednesday.
Celebration. Yes.
It's a rest and celebrate day.
Yes, yes. We should do that. We need a rest and
Mhm.
celebrate graphic.
Oh, that will be happening between now and next
Yes.
week for sure.
Yes.
Rest and celebrate.
Mm,
Yeah, because we realized, I mean, we were scheduled, we were going to
mhm,
go live next week, and then we're
mhm,
like,
Mhm.
wait a second. We teach about the 8 dimensions of wellness.
mhm.
It's okay if we take a break.
Mhm.
It's okay. In
Yeah,
fact, it's
taking a
not
break is
only
good, and it's
okay,
modeling what you
right?
teach. Yes.
And that's what
Right?
we've been talking about.
Mhm.
Part of the problem is we love this show so much and
Yeah, we
we
do.
love connecting with each other every week and our
Mhm.
guests like you who are awesome. It's
Mm,
hard to say, no, 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 we're not going to do that this week.
yeah,
Right.
Right?
yeah.
But I
Mhm.
think it's a good point to bring up. Too much of a good thing, whether it's good or bad. Like it's easy to have, it's to me, sometimes it's easier to have boundaries and to have wellness around things that I'm not a big fan of, right?
Right.
Like,
Mhm,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I can set a
Mhm.
boundary about that, or oh yeah, but it's the good stuff, right?
mhm,
Like
Mhm.
I love this, I love doing this, I love all my collaborate. Where are the boundaries in that, right?
mhm,
Right.
And I think that well, and I think about that when I think about social wellness, right?
mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
When we all went through the pandemic for 2 years, we had some serious boundaries that had
Yeah.
never showed up before, right?
Mhm.
And now as the world is opening back up, even though more people I know have COVID than ever, um, how do we have those boundaries and get back out there and nurture ourselves and each
Mhm.
other and community and have community
Mhm.
care around it?
Mhm.
Mhm,
I think it's a question a
mhm.
lot of people are asking themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
And I would think about what do you want it to look like? You know, in a perfect world, if you could, if we're setting it back up again, what does that look like? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of picturing what it is that you want instead of just trying to go back to what was already there because that's what you're used to. Because
absolutely.
what was our norm before was not working for everybody,
And it
so
will,
what
For
do we
most
want it to look
people,
like? Yeah.
right. And it'll
Mhm.
never look like that before. So going back is not a thing. You know, I feel
Mhm.
like in most situations when we ever say that, you might I don't think there is a going back. You know, you might
Right.
return to a certain, let's say, level of communication with somebody, but if something happened between Cecile and our relationship, it's gonna be different. Now we're in a new
Mhm.
place, and it might look similar, but
Mhm.
yeah.
That makes me think of all of the employers that are trying to get people to come back to the office right now, and we now know that people can work from home and be productive, sometimes more productive, but
Mhm.
the people who are in power are wanting things to go back to the way they were, and employees are not having it.
did y'all see the TEDx talk? I'll link it for our show in the show notes.
Mhm.
But there is definite evidence that a 4-day work week
Mhm.
is healthy and more productive. Like they're doing it in European countries, in
Mhm.
several European countries. But I was watching this TED talk recently about why we should be looking at that model, whether it's virtual or in person. I'll link it for y'all because
Mm.
I think this is a good thing to talk about as far as our
Mhm.
culture. Like so, the virtual and the remote worked for a lot of people, and for some people it didn't. But
Yeah.
what works for different bodies,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I love and
And
thinking
and
about this.
giving the people who are doing the work the option and the input instead of just looking at the people in charge. Because I've worked in places where I know I could do the work from home. I've worked places where, I had chronic fatigue, I had fibromyalgia, and it was really hard for me to get to work, and it was really hard for me to sit at a desk for 8 hours. And even though I could work from home because I'm mostly writing and didn't interact with a lot of people, my supervisor wanted me there so that when she walked past, she could see me in the office, and it wasn't about me being productive and getting the job done. It was about her micromanaging, you know?
Mhm.
Right?
And so I think a lot of people are in that space where they don't feel comfortable with change. They don't believe that people are working, even though you can see the product of their work. I just want to
Mhm.
see my people.
Mhm.
It's not
Right.
about the work, it's about my discomfort with not having full control.
I
Mm.
also am curious. I would be curious about a social study around is it their discomfort around control or are they missing the social interactions
Mhm.
and the social wellness at
Mm,
work? I mean, I bet there's some of a little bit about both,
Probably
It
right?
probably
a
depends on the
little bit about both.
motivation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think about, because I know some people who were so excited to go back to work
Mhm,
because at home and the remote, they didn't have the social networks or the social wellness that
mhm,
Mhm.
their work was their social wellness. It wasn't in
Mhm.
balance with
mhm,
external relationships outside of work.
mhm.
Y'all, we could just keep talking all night about this. I feel like it is just more shall be revealed as we
Mhm.
come out of this year. So,
Mhm.
and it's about time for our wisdom in action.
It is. It is. I'll go first. I think I just thought of mine. I'm gonna say for social wellness, hashtag support your system. Because we were working on the business systems, but also because it's been a lot of celebrations. Celebrated my little brother's birthday. We're celebrating multiple new lives.
Shout
And
out real quick.
to
Happy birthday.
Starson,
What's your Starson?
yes,
Happy
Starson
birthday,
turned
Starson.
7.
Happy
Yes.
birthday. You say he's 7?
Yes.
Aw.
Yeah. So we went to Fellini's and had some good pizza, but yeah, just making sure I balance it, balance the work and how I want to show up in my social network and make sure that I'm
Mhm.
pouring out to them just like they pour into me.
Mhm.
What about you, Cecile? What's your wisdom in action?
My wisdom in action is gonna be about balance. I mean, I told y'all how several times a day I check on my breathing and I ground or I go outside to put my feet in the grass. And I think my wisdom in action is gonna be about focusing on balance. Because I know with everything that's going on with me lately, I have been really pushing myself to get things done and not doing so much creative and resting and relaxation. So my wisdom in action
Mhm.
is gonna be to bring balance to, you know, this transition.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love
Mhm.
that.
What about
I
you,
think
Christine?
for my wisdom in action around social wellness, I think it's going to be hashtag be present and like really kind of
Mhm.
listen in and check in on some friends that I haven't checked in on a while, like to really be present with, like the definition said, am I nurturing myself? Am
Mhm.
I nurturing
Mhm.
others in my community? But I think
Mhm.
that takes a presence to be able to do that and have good
Mhm.
boundaries. So I
Yeah.
think that's what I'm going to go for. So, Cecile, before we put you back in the green room with the imaginary tea and chocolate,
Mm.
do you have any upcoming events that you want to share with folks?
I
Uh,
sure do.
Tell us what's happening.
All right, so tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I am running a free webinar called Everybody versus Racism. And it's going to
Hmm.
be an hour of us talking about how white supremacy and racism were designed to be invisible. They were created so that white people wouldn't see them. And so that's why so many white people just don't get it. And they're like, I don't see this. This isn't a problem for me. I don't understand why people are what are up in arms about. Well, we're going to talk about how they were created to be invisible so that white folks would have that reaction. And then we're going to talk about some ways that you can build equity into your everyday life and make it a habit so that equity isn't some pie in the sky ideal or some core value that you talk about over here. It's an actual thing that you do. So,
Yay. Yay, yay,
mhm.
yay. We will
Yes.
put that in the show notes. We will also give a shout out on social media since that's tomorrow. And I'm
Okay,
hoping
thank
you're going
you.
to offer it more than once.
I
Is that
am. I am going to offer
okay?
it more than once. I'm looking at dates in July and August for doing this again.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much for the work you do in the world. And thank
Oh,
you
Yes.
thank
being
you.
a part of the Women Connected in Wisdom community and our
Oh,
lives. And we just, my world is better because you're in it. And
oh,
Definitely
thank
so
you.
true.
is mine. Thank you. I was so glad to be invited. I'm glad. Who was it? Paul that put us together.
Right? Paul
You know,
Mm.
Zellers over at the
I'm
Awarepreneurs
grateful to
community.
Paul for saying that we needed to meet.
Right?
Mm.
And look what has happened a year later.
I
Like,
Yes.
know.
we got a book coming out
Mhm.
together. We got
Hmm.
some collaborations on multiple fronts happening. Like, y'all,
Yeah.
this is what happens
Yeah.
when women connect, right?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
So, all right, my
Mm.
friend.
All
See you
right.
soon. We
Thank you
All
so
adore
right.
much.
you. Thank you
You.
for being here. Ah, such good stuff.
Yes.
So grateful.
Yes. And I'm so grateful to know how to deal with things. You know, I was thinking about little Shannon, and I think what she needed was some Shalo glow and some habits to take care of herself physically, and books like we're about to write. You know, like what are women's stories and how do they do all this stuff? Like I need to be set up. I was definitely reading Chicken Noodle Soup, and I definitely, clearly my book is our favorite, but I think little Shannon would have liked it too. So I'm having a great time.
I love that, my friend. Well,
Hmm.
I am so grateful to be in community with you and to be connected, that
Yes,
we get to do this work together and we get to uplift women's voices and introduce them all across our platforms. So folks get to
absolutely.
know some amazing people.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining us for episode 72. Next week, 73, and it's actually the last episode of season
Oh,
8. What's that?
actually, well,
What?
yes, but not next week, because remember, we're
Oh,
taking next
we
week
are
off.
taking a break.
So it'll
Rest and
be in two
celebrate
weeks,
in 2
right?
weeks. Yes. And in the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you soon.
See you in 2 weeks.